Chapter 2507. Boom! 12 heaven-defying divine artifacts collided. A destructive aura roared in all directions. However, even so, the sovereign divine realm did not move. It was indestructible. Sunset divine bow. What is the meaning of this? An angry roar sounded. The short blade that came from the blood-red clothed youth was filled with a vicious aura that could not be dispersed. Isn't it obvious? We are no longer in the same camp. We each serve our own masters, the Sunset Divine Bow said. Is a mere Qin Feiyang qualified for you to serve? Short Blade shouted. I used to think the same as you, but when I really understood Qin Feiyang, I realized that Long Zun is no match for him at all. The Sunset Divine Bow said. Short Blade said in a deep voice. It seems that we have to fight to the death. Then don't talk nonsense, let's fight. As soon as the Sunset Divine Bow's voice fell, an arrow condensed out of flames, carrying a destructive aura, shot toward Short Blade. Clang! Short Blade's edge was also monstrous, madly attacking. The void here was directly smashed into chaos. Qin Feiyang. The armor formed by rust is enough to block the fluctuations of our battle. You must find a way to break the sovereign divine realm. The axe's voice sounded in Qin Feiyang's mind, and then it also erupted with a destructive aura, attacking the thin sword. A chaotic battle began. This was a battle of heaven-defying divine artifacts, and no one could interfere. They had all unsealed, and were evenly matched. However, the broken sword was an exception, because the broken sword's seal was different from the Sunset Divine Bow, and the other heaven-defying divine artifacts. The Sunset Divine Bow, and the other heaven-defying divine artifacts were self-sealed, and could be unsealed at any time. But the broken sword's seal was imposed by an outsider. It had no way to break this seal by itself. The broken sword's opponent was the bronze halberd. Facing the fully recovered bronze halberd, the broken sword did not seem to have much power to fight back, and was defeated. All of this. Qin Feiyang saw it all. If this continued, the one who lost in the end would definitely be him. Huff! Taking a deep breath, Qin Feiyang looked at the broken sword and said, Hold on! As soon as he finished speaking, he resolutely turned around and executed the movement character formula as he flashed towards the distant sea. Where do you think you're going? Seeing this, the 6 ancestral dragons roared and charged towards Qin Feiyang. Whether it was cultivation or speed, they were far superior to Qin Feiyang. In the blink of an eye, the 6 of them had caught up to Qin Feiyang and surrounded him. Of course, they knew what Qin Feiyang was going to do. Activate the slaughter domain. Knowing the might of the slaughter domain, they naturally wouldn't give Qin Feiyang this opportunity. Are you that afraid of me activating my slaughter domain? Qin Feiyang sneered. Cut the crap and die. The blood-red clothed teenager slapped at Qin Feiyang. When he thought of the grievances he had suffered during this period of time, the anger in his heart could not be suppressed. Divine power surged out. The young man was like a devil god, and he was filled with a monstrous baleful aura and vicious aura. Boom! His palm slapped on Qin Feiyang's armor. Puff! Qin Feiyang's body shook, and he spat out a mouthful of blood as he took a few steps back. Although the armor was formed from the rust of the axe, compared to the axe itself, the rust didn't seem that strong. However, it also helped Qin Feiyang block the power of the palm, so his life wasn't in danger. But just as Qin Feiyang retreated, the white-clothed woman standing behind him also slapped at Qin Feiyang's back. Puff! Qin Feiyang spat out another mouthful of blood and staggered forward. The other ancestral dragon standing in front of Qin Feiyang also immediately attacked. Facing the 6 ancestral dragons, he didn't have the strength to fight back at all. Like a ball, he was sandwiched in the middle by the 6 ancestral dragons and kicked around. I'd like to see how long your armor can last. An old woman shouted and kicked Qin Feiyang's body. This old woman was wearing a long green robe. Her wrinkled face was filled with hostility. She was the ancestral dragon of the wood dragon race. Qin Feiyang didn't say anything from the beginning to the end, and looked at the 6 of them gloomily. In the distance, the battle of the 12 heaven-defying legendary weapons had also entered a climax. However, in comparison, the broken sword seemed to be in a sorry state. Qin Feiyang glanced at the broken sword before looking at the 6 ancestral dragons again, and smiled sinisterly. If you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Swoosh. In the blink of an eye, Qin Feiyang disappeared. The 6 ancestral dragons were shocked. Was he going to reveal the ancient castle? Longzuan raised his brows as well, and his eyes emitted a milky white light. Immediately, he saw the ancient castle in the void. The 6 ancestral dragons looked up at Longzuan with killing intent in their eyes and shouted, "Sir, lead us into the ancient castle." However, Longzuan didn't respond. Because she didn't know that the ancient castle was sealed, she wasn't confident. Swoosh. However, it was only for a moment. Qin Feiyang appeared again. The battle armor formed by rust was still there. He wore a battle sword and stood in the killing zone, holding a blood-colored sword in his hand. How is it so fast? The 6 ancestral dragons were surprised. Is it surprising that the ancient castle has a 1 day and 100 years time array? Qin Feiyang sneered. He slashed at the blood-robed youth. What? 1 day and 100 years? The 6 ancestral dragons were dumbfounded. Longzuan and the youth in red were also shocked. Ah! The blood-colored sword arrived, and the blood-robed youth screamed as his body was cut in half on the spot. Blood splattered across the sky. A blood dragon immediately materialized. This was the true body of the blood-robed youth, a blood dragon. Although this blood is only enough to activate the 2nd stage, it's more than enough to kill you. Qin Feiyang whispered and slashed at the white-robed woman again. Retreat! The white-robed woman shuddered, and immediately took the blood-robed youth's body out of the sovereign divine realm. The other 4 ancestral dragons also didn't dare to delay, and escaped from the sovereign divine realm. They stood beside Longzuan, and stared at Qin Feiyang in horror. So this is the killing zone. Even the ancestral dragons can't fight back. It's indeed worthy of its reputation. The youth in red whispered. So what? No matter how powerful the killing zone is, it can't break the sovereign divine realm. Such a heaven-defying technique must have its flaws, such as a time limit. Once the time is up, killing him will be as easy as flipping my hand. Longzuan said indifferently and waved his hand. A milky white divine light entered the blood dragon's body, and the body that was cut in half began to heal. That's right. Qin Feiyang, if you can break the sovereign divine realm, come out and kill us. If you can't break it, then we have all the time to waste with you. The white-robed woman looked down at Qin Feiyang and sneered. Qin Feiyang ignored her and Longzuan, and turned to look at the broken sword. Although the broken sword was still fighting tenaciously, there were many cracks on the blade. There were also a few cracks on the sword. Blood. I need a large amount of blood. Qin Feiyang suddenly roared, and a terrifying suction force erupted from his body. Suddenly, a strong wind whistled in the void. Blood from the sea in the distance flowed toward them like a river of blood. However, at this moment, Longzuan took a step into the sovereign divine realm and pointed at the sky. The river of blood immediately turned into nothingness in the void. Do you think I'll give you a chance to absorb blood? Longzuan looked coldly at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang wasn't surprised, because when the 6 ancestral dragons descended, he had already expected such an outcome. The confrontation of the 12 heaven-defying divine weapons had almost killed all the sea beasts in the inner sea. The entire inner sea had turned into a sea of blood. For Qin Feiyang, it was a treasure. However, Longzuan and the 6 ancestral dragons who had seen the power of the slaughter domain would definitely not let him get what he wanted. In other words, faced with the boundless blood, he could only watch helplessly. Although he had expected this, he was still very disappointed, because this undoubtedly forced him into a desperate situation. Without blood, without a heaven-defying divine weapon, what can you do? You can't do anything. You can only watch the broken sword shatter. The ancestral dragons kept mocking him. As his voice fell, the broken sword suddenly broke into 2 pieces. The originally bright purple-gold divine light also dimmed immediately. Clang! After the broken sword, the bronze halberd immediately rushed toward Qin Feiyang. No one can hurt him. Fu Tu roared and forcibly unsheathed his thin sword, blocking in front of Qin Feiyang, and slashing at the bronze halberd. Clang! Sparks flew, and the bronze halberd was sent flying. But in the next moment, the bronze halberd and the thin sword joined forces and attacked Fu Tu. Fu Tu met the attack without fear. What can I do? Qin Feiyang muttered. The broken sword broke to protect him. Fu Tu also faced two heaven-defying divine weapons alone to protect him. But what about him? He could only stand here and watch. He couldn't help at all. No, this wasn't how Qin Feiyang should behave. He had encountered so many powerful opponents, but he didn't admit defeat. This time he wouldn't admit defeat either. Swish! Qin Feiyang clenched his hands and appeared in the sky above the Devil's Land. Boom! Waves of rule force fell from the sky, turning into thousands of strands and shrouding the entire Black Tortoise world. What's that? The creatures of the Black Tortoise world, whether they were humans or beasts, all looked at the sky in surprise. I am Qin Feiyang. I believe everyone is no stranger to me. But there is one thing that many of you don't know. A long time ago, I was the master of the Black Tortoise world. That's right. I am the master of the Black Tortoise world, and all of you are my people. Everything you have was given to you by me, like the divine treasures of the Desert of Death, like the divine items and treasures of the various forbidden lands. Now, I have encountered a powerful enemy. I hope you can help me. I need a large amount of blood. Please raise your hands. Qin Feiyang spoke. His sincere voice was transmitted into the minds of every creature in the Black Tortoise world. Qin Feiyang, the master of our Black Tortoise world. You're joking, right? At this moment, all creatures in the Black Tortoise world were shocked. In the sky above a city, two figures flew out from the city. They were Pai Lupi and Theta Wang. The two stood above the city, looking at the Devil's Land, their eyes filled with shock. What does he need blood for? There's such a powerful enemy. How powerful is this enemy that can make him so helpless? The two were puzzled. Please everyone. Qin Feiyang's voice once again rang in the minds of countless creatures. Master, how much blood do you need? We will give it to you. Pai Lupi and Theta Wang looked at each other, then raised their hands and shouted at the people in the city. Everyone, raise your hands. Thank you, Qin Feiyang muttered. When he spoke earlier, he had already released his perception. Therefore, he saw everything that Pai Lupi and Theta Wang did. Strands of the power of laws fell, cutting Pai Lupi and Theta Wang's wrists. Blood immediately gushed out. Chapter 2508. Under Pai Lupi's lead, the people in the city also raised their hands one after another. In addition to his current state, wounds appeared on everyone's wrists. It was enough for him to upgrade his slaughter domain to the third stage, gathering in the devil's land. The blood from all directions gathered into a sea of blood, raised their hands, continuously pouring into the devil's land. And other places thought about it and ignored it. Blood. I could have killed you all like last time and snatched your blood today, but I didn't promise everyone that in the near future. Please give me some trust. I will give the entire Black Tortoise world a great fortune. Qin Feiyang's grateful voice once again sounded in the minds of many of the people in the Black Tortoise world of the past. Is this Lord Qin Feiyang really the ruler of our Black Tortoise world? All the living beings died. In a small mountain village, but later Qin Feiyang used a heaven-defying ability to look at a woman beside him and ask, "They still remember these things. Then how do you know whether he's lying to us or not? Black Tortoise world. He won't lie to us. How can we not help him after the last catastrophe? Moreover, Mother he gave us so many divine items with her own eyes. In another city, child, you raise your hand. An old man stood in the sky. A woman raised her hand while rubbing the boy's hand and smiled. Do you think that if the ruler dies, the boy also raised his hand, will be able to stay out of trouble? In the blink of an eye. Let me tell you, as the blood continued to pour in, the ruler is already benevolent. The blood-colored sword erupted like a volcano, in a deep mountain, crazily rising. A burly man looked at the beasts around him and roared, alarmed all living beings in the Black Tortoise to be safe. We must help the power of our blood. Trust me. Everyone was surprised. The ruler is worthy of your help. So their blood had such an ability. Do you see the law power? Clang. If the ruler about 100 breaths past, he can kill us all in an instant. The aura of the blood-colored sword suddenly rose to another level. People in various places of the Black Tortoise world stood up and called for help. Suppressing the destructive power. They were the 10 people who had been brought into the devil's land by the fire lotus. The Black Tortoise world would be destroyed. The chaos divine pill. They had lost too much blood. The living beings in the Black Tortoise world were pale and weak. Had terrifying divine artifacts and experts by his side. Qin Feiyang muttered as the power was actually asking for help from the beings of the Black Tortoise world. The sky suddenly one could imagine how much trouble he was in. Into the killing zone. All right, we believe him. Immediately after, raise your hands. Without any delay, he took a step forward of the Black Tortoise and appeared in the sky above the inner sea. The humans raised their hands high. Only a moment had passed. While the beasts raised their claws high. Qin Feiyang didn't suppress it anymore. And the power of the blood-colored strands of rule force fell. What? And every living being in the Black Tortoise world had a wound on their body. How did it become so much stronger? Soared into the sky. Where did he find the enveloping the heaven and the earth? The Black Tortoise world after fusing with the ancient castle. Do you think that by stopping these time law became one day, 100 years? Let me tell you, it had already developed for hundreds of thousands of years. There are thousands of living beings so many years. Whether it was the number of living rushed to the side of cultivation bases and slashed at the bronze halberd, increased by more than 10 times. The blood-colored sword or even dozens and the bronze halberd collided. Therefore, the bronze halberd was no longer needed to exterminate the Black Tortoise appeared on the blade. Everyone only needed to contribute was also forced back. The battle armor formed by rust on his body also nearly collapsed. It can't be. It can actually fight against a heaven-defying artifact fiery clothes was dumbfounded. This killing zone was too heaven-defying. Kill. Qin Feiyang looked at the axe and his blood-colored hair fluttered as he directly clashed with the bronze halberd. Long Zun, are you surprised? Haha. This is Qin Feiyang. The weapon spirit of the axe laughed wildly as it charged at the thin sword. Clang. The broken sword that had been broken into two once again rushed toward Qin Feiyang. It was as if it was telling Qin Feiyang that it could still fight. Qin Feiyang glanced at the broken sword, then glanced at the axe, sunset divine bow, and the other heaven-defying divine artifacts. The blood in his body couldn't help but boil as he laughed heartily. Today, let us slaughter our way to the heavens and make the entire divine prefecture tremble beneath our feet. Boom! The power of the blood-colored sword was still increasing, because there was still a lot of blood in the killing zone that had not been absorbed. What kind of young man is this? The youth in fiery clothes murmured. In the face of such a desperate situation, he could still pull himself together and fight while bathed in blood. Did you notice? The power of his blood-colored sword is still increasing. The green-robed old woman transformed from wood dragon ancestor dragon gloomily stared at the blood-colored sword in Qin Feiyang's hand. Because there is still blood in the killing zone. If this continues, I'm afraid the scene in the Star River will happen again. The white-robed woman said in a deep voice. Whether it was Longzuan or the other ancestor dragons, they could not help but feel a chill when they thought of the scene in the Star River. Longzuan suddenly said, "But don't you think it's strange?" "What's strange?" The youth in fiery clothes and the other ancestor dragons were suspicious. Longzuan said, Until now, the ancient castle has not made a move. Yes. If the ancient castle is so strong, why hasn't it made a move? Could there be a problem? The other ancestor dragons were puzzled. Actually, you have overlooked an important point, and that is the Black Tortoise world. Just now, Qin Feiyang said that the Black Tortoise world is an independent world, and there are thousands of living beings in it. The youth in fiery clothes said, "You really believe that? Someone like him deserves an independent world?" The other ancestor dragons sneered. The youth in Huai said, "But look at him, he's not joking." The great ancestor dragon looked at Qin Feiyang. Was he really not joking? An independent world? If that was the case, then wouldn't this kid be the ruler of a world? Even they, the dragons, did not have this kind of glory. Longzuan clenched his fists and said word by word, "Today he must die." The other ancestor dragons also nodded. Below, the battle became more and more intense. Qin Feiyang's whole body was spurting blood, and the blood that flowed out of his body was also absorbed by the blood-colored sword. All the heaven-defying artifacts, whether it was Qin Feiyang's side or the dragon's side, were also full of scars. Finally, the blood in the killing field was all absorbed by the blood-colored sword. The power of the blood-colored sword had indeed become a little stronger, but it was not obvious. However, in a battle of this level, being a little stronger could also play a key role. The bronze halberd that was fighting with Qin Feiyang was also more and more shocked. What kind of young man was this? Where did he get such a heaven-defying artifact from? No matter how strong you are, you won't be a match for this sovereign. Because this sovereign has already unlocked the seal, the bronze halberd spirit said contemptuously, and a black energy burst out. Qin Feiyang's eyes instantly fell into darkness. And not only his vision, he felt that his hearing, perception, and so on were also gradually disappearing. This is... Qin Feiyang was surprised and did not hesitate to slash with his sword, but the blood-colored sword was unable to split the black energy. Die! The bronze halberd took the opportunity to kill Qin Feiyang. And it was also at this moment that the axe swept to Qin Feiyang's side, and a five-colored force gushed out. When this five-colored force appeared, the black energy automatically disappeared. Qin Feiyang's vision, hearing, and perception were restored. Looking at the bronze halberd, he did not hesitate to hold the blood-colored sword and slashed out. Clang! The two retreated again. The bronze halberd immediately shouted at the axe, "Don't meddle in other people's business." Humph! The axe coldly snorted and said, "Qin Feiyang, this is the power of its law of darkness. It can seal the sensory ability of the five senses." The power of law. Qin Feiyang frowned. Yes. After unlocking the seal, the heaven-defying artifact's power of law is extremely terrifying. Your blood sword can't break it. Be careful. Fu Tu warned and continued to fight with the thin sword. Chapter 2509. The Power of Law. Qin Feiyang looked at the bronze halberd. Although he still did not understand the power of law, he believed that no power in the world could be invincible. "I won't give that broken axe a second chance to help you." The bronze halberd roared, and the power of law appeared again. Qin Feiyang's senses were sealed again. Qin Feiyang simply closed his eyes. The power of law could seal his senses, but it could not seal his heart. Slowly feel, slowly capture. He would definitely be able to capture it. Let's see who can save you this time. The bronze halberd shone brightly, like a graceful swan, and shot towards Qin Feiyang's forehead. And all of this, Qin Feiyang was not aware of it at all. Beside his ears and in front of his eyes, there was only dead silence. However, in this state, Qin Feiyang seemed to understand some truths. Darkness only blinded the eyes. And what the eyes saw might not be true. Illusion. Heart. The heart was the brightest pair of eyes of all living things in the boundless universe. The heart was clear, and nothing could deceive you. As long as the heart was not confused, and there was no despair, then it would definitely be able to push aside the darkness and see the light. And this light was not the light that the eyes saw, but the light of dawn that belonged to one's heart, the light of hope. Suddenly, inside the black power that enveloped Qin Feiyang, a ray of light emerged. The light was very weak, almost invisible to the naked eye. But at this moment, the world seemed to have fallen into a dead silence. Whether it was Long Zun and the others who dominated the god's realm, or the major heaven-defying artifacts, they all looked at Qin Feiyang. What was that ray of light? With justice in the heart, the light of a firefly can also illuminate the world. Qin Feiyang's voice sounded. The light became brighter and brighter. Finally, a dazzling divine light tore apart the black power and burst out. As long as there is dawn in the heart, thank you for allowing me to understand the mysteries of light. Qin Feiyang's voice became louder and louder. This should be the law of light, like the sound of heaven rolling in the inner sea. Qin Feiyang took a step forward. As long as the heart has converged and turned into a thumb-sized flame that floated in his palm. Light like a raging fire. The flames were pure white, like the righteous energy. A holy aura. Light, moreover, like a bright lamp, it also contained an invisible will. Light is the foundation of the universe. It guides all things in the world. Stared at the flame in Qin Feiyang's palm in disbelief. His voice grew louder and louder as it reverberated in the void, seeming also extremely shocked. Yes, he had actually used the law of darkness to comprehend the law of indelible flame of hope in the hearts of all beings in the world. A mere peerless God could comprehend the law of light. Thunderclap that exploded in the sky above the inner sea. Setting aside the heaven-defying artifacts, within the black energy, the people here included to a terrifying degree. The Beast Emperor, it was like a scorching sun, ancestor dragons, making Long Zun their cultivation levels had all stepped into the imperishable realm. But apart from Long Zun, who else could comprehend the law of light? To the living beings of the world, the law of light was a power that surpassed everything. It was an unattainable dream. But now, they had personally witnessed a young man, who was much weaker than them comprehending the law of light. Just how terrifying is this boy's talent, comprehension, and potential? Is this why the Sunset Bao and the others chose to follow him? The fiery-robed youth murmured. A mere peerless god had actually comprehended the law of light. How shocking was this? This boy was indeed the greatest threat to the dragons. Lord Long Zun, you must kill him. This boy cannot be left alive. At all costs. The 6 ancestor dragons roared. The young man in red had also recovered from his injuries. He looked at Qin Feiyang with murderous intent. Phew. Long Zun exhaled deeply. He lowered his head to look at Qin Feiyang and said, Qin Feiyang, you really amaze me time and time again. Qin Feiyang looked up at Long Zun and waited for him to continue. Long Zun said, Come, my dragons. I will bestow upon you supreme glory. I will also make the decision to betroth my daughter to you. What? The 6 ancestor dragons and the fiery-robed youth looked at Long Zun in shock. The weapon spirits of the 12 heaven-defying artifacts were also in disbelief. Betrothing the princess of the dragons to Qin Feiyang? This was a great honor for the humans of the ancient realm. They never thought that Long Zun would value Qin Feiyang so much. Qin Feiyang was also stunned. He originally thought that Long Zun would kill him at all costs to prevent future troubles. But unexpectedly, he actually wanted him to join the dragons. He even married his own daughter to him. If he agreed, wouldn't he become Long Zun's son-in-law? Becoming Long Zun's son-in-law meant that he would be second only to one person, and above tens of thousands of people. This kind of good thing, who knows how many people wanted it? If it were someone else, they probably wouldn't even think about it, and directly nodded their head in agreement. And, you don't have to sign the fate contract. Of course, I also know that the fate contract can't bind you. Long Zun said again. Qin Feiyang came back to his senses, and looked down at the white flame in his hand. With a thought, the flame entered his sea of consciousness, and floated beside his divine soul. Then, he looked up at the dragons again and shook his head. Your daughter's body is priceless. I'm afraid I'm not worthy of her. Long Zun immediately frowned. Qin Feiyang said again. But what? Long Zun asked. If the dragons can give up ruling the ancient realm and live in a corner, we can be friends. Qin Feiyang said. If they could solve all the problems in such a peaceful way, that would naturally be the best. Impossible. The ancient realm must be ruled by the dragons, Long Zun said resolutely. Qin Feiyang shook his head in disappointment and said, Then there's no room for discussion, let's fight. Qin Feiyang took a step forward and took the initiative to attack the bronze halberd. The axe, sunset bow, and other heaven-defying artifacts also attacked their respective opponents. The battle began again. Clang! The blood-colored sword and the bronze halberd collided, and the destructive aura was earth-shattering. Qin Feiyang shouted, Let me experience the power of your law of darkness again. What are you being arrogant for? Your law of darkness is just at the threshold. The bronze halberd roared, and the law of darkness emerged again. But this time, the darkness could no longer blind his eyes, nor could it seal his senses. Although it's just at the threshold, it's not comparable to a divine artifact like you who relied on others to obtain the law of darkness. Qin Feiyang waved the blood-colored sword and constantly collided with the bronze halberd. The sparks from the collision were as brilliant as fireworks. Clang! Suddenly, a crack appeared on the bronze halberd. How is this possible? The bronze halberd's artifact spirit was shocked. Can't you see it? The power of the blood sword is a little stronger than yours. Although it's just a little, as long as you give me time, I'll destroy you sooner or later. Qin Feiyang smiled coldly. Damn it! The bronze halberd's artifact spirit was furious to the extreme. As a heaven-defying artifact, it was forced to such an extent by a human, with only the cultivation of a god. It was simply a great shame. Clang! At this moment, a crack appeared on the thin sword that had clashed with the axe. How could this be? The sword's artifact spirit turned pale with fright. Sorry, but my strength has now surpassed yours. As Qin Feiyang said, although it's only a little, as long as I have enough time, I'll destroy you sooner or later. The sword's artifact spirit roared. The axe's artifact spirit sneered. Clang! Impossible. Before its voice died away, the heaven-defying artifact yellow shield, can become stronger. The 3-meter-long iron whip, the blood-colored dagger, and the 3-foot-long iron rod. These 4 divine artifacts, under the indiscriminate bombardment of the sunset divine bow, and the other 3 heaven-defying artifacts, had a crack one after another. How could this be? The artifact spirits roared in disbelief. The sunset divine bow's artifact spirit said, Isn't it simple? Because we've all become stronger. Impossible. How long have you been following Qin Feiyang? Besides, what ability does he have to make you stronger? The bronze halberd's artifact spirit roared. Haha. Didn't you hear that the Black Tortoise world lasts 100 years, and is an independent world? In the thousands of years in the Black Tortoise world, we've been cultivating in the land of origin. The sunset divine bow's artifact spirit laughed. The land of origin. The artifact spirits exclaimed. The land of origin. Since there's a land of origin, it means that the Black Tortoise world is really an independent world. The fiery-robed youth muttered. Hearing this, the 6 ancestral dragons' bodies and minds trembled. An independent world. How could this little bastard's luck be so good? A terrifying slaughter domain, an independent world, and that shocking talent and comprehension. Why did the heavens like him so much? All the good things were given to him. How about it? Do you guys want to join Qin Feiyang as well? I guarantee that you'll be able to enter the land of origin. The sunset divine bow's artifact spirit said to the sword, and the other 4 heaven-defying artifacts. The 6 heaven-defying artifact spirits fell silent. To these heaven-defying divine artifacts, the land of origin was an irresistible question. Lord Dragon Sovereign, quickly think of a way, or they'll betray us. Seeing this, the white-robed woman hurriedly shouted. The blood-robed youth, and the other 4 were also extremely anxious. The betrayal of the 4 heaven-defying artifacts, including the sunset divine bow, was already a great loss to the dragons. If even the sword and the other 4 heaven-defying artifacts betrayed them, then the dragons would really suffer a great loss. This was because a heaven-defying divine artifact could play an absolute role in any force. Chapter 25:10. However, Long Zun remained silent. But at the same time, hearing the words of the Sunset Divine Bao's spirit, Qin Feiyang's heart couldn't help but move. If these 6 heaven-defying artifacts also betrayed the dragons, that would be a great thing for him. Because in this way, the dragons wouldn't even have a single heaven-defying artifact in the future. The strength of the dragons would plummet, while his strength would skyrocket. Qin Feiyang said, "I promise, as long as you abandon the dark and join the light, I promise to let you enter the land of Source." What he said was undoubtedly more convincing than what the Sunset Divine Bao's spirit said, because he was the master of the Black Tortoise realm. When the 6 heaven-defying artifacts heard this, they became more and more tempted. The Axe artifact spirit also said, "This opportunity knocks but once. You must think it through." Boom! Suddenly, a terrifying aura erupted. Qin Feiyang was shocked and raised his head to look at Long Zun. "In front of this sovereign, you instigated them to betray this sovereign. It seems that you really don't put this sovereign in your eyes. For the last time, this sovereign will ask you one more time. Do you want to join my dragons?" Long Zun lowered his head to look at Qin Feiyang and said coldly, "If our paths are different, we can't work together." Qin Feiyang said, "All right." Long Zun's killing intent suddenly surged. He raised his head to look at the Divine Dragon Island and said sincerely, "Please kill this child." Boom! His voice fell, accompanied by a loud explosion. A milky white divine light swept out from the sacred mountain. Whoosh! The divine light contained a world-destroying divine power, shattering the sky and rushing over like lightning. Qin Feiyang's face suddenly sank, because at this moment, he clearly felt that there was a terrifying aura firmly locked onto him. What is this? Qin Feiyang was surprised. The 12 law-defying artifacts stopped fighting too. They trembled slightly as if they were trembling in fear. Not good. This aura. It has already surpassed the heaven-defying artifact. The Axe spirit exclaimed. What? Surpassed the heaven-defying artifact? Isn't that a sovereign weapon? Qin Feiyang felt as if he had been struck by a bolt from the blue, his mind rumbling. The Divine Dragon Island actually hit a sovereign divine weapon? But how was that possible? The sovereign divine weapon was a peerless divine took out the gate of space and only the creator gods and were poured in his divine power. As for the dragons, with a loud sound, although they were powerful, the gate of space and time was successfully opened. Realm. It's possible. How could they possibly have the sovereign divine weapons and the other divine artifacts were overjoyed? A terrifying thought emerged in Qin Feiyang's mind and rushed into the gate of space. Also one of the dragons' slaughter domain. No, the 12 divine artifacts belonged to the dragons. Why would he give him the ancient castle? Long Zun waved his hand, and the void in front of him split formula. Then, he rushed in with the fire-robed youth and the 6 ancestral dragons. At the same time, the dozens of divine lights also stopped in the void. When Qin Feiyang went through the gate of space and time and teleported to the other side of the inner sea, the dozens of divine lights also turned in the air and continued to attack Qin Feiyang. On the other side of the inner sea, the sea water was blood red, and there were countless sea beast corpses floating on the sea surface. The air was filled with the smell of blood that couldn't be dispersed. So much. It's definitely enough for me to upgrade the slaughter domain to the 4th stage. Qin Feiyang looked at the blood-red sea, and his eyes were full of fire. He immediately put away the gate of space and began to absorb. The thin sword and the other divine artifacts also began to help collect. Whoosh! Longzuan and the group also appeared outside the sovereign's domain. Lord Longzuan. Seeing that there was so much blood below, the 6 ancestral dragons became nervous. They wanted to go down and stop it. However, although the broken sword and the other divine artifacts were severely damaged by the divine lights, and their strength fell greatly, there were still the thin sword and the other divine artifacts. The seals of each of them were unlocked. If they dared to enter the sovereign's domain, the 6 divine artifacts would definitely kill them immediately, and they would not have the strength to fight back. Don't panic. I don't believe that the slaughter domain can really grow to the level of a sovereign weapon. Longzuan snorted coldly, but in his heart he was also a little worried. The 10 divine artifacts had all rebelled. If the dragons did not use the sovereign weapon, there was no way they could fight with Qin Feiyang. These damn things. Sooner or later, I will crush your bones and destroy your soul. Staring at the sunset divine bow and the other divine artifacts, Longzuan's eyes were full of hatred. This hatred was even more than the hatred for Qin Feiyang. Whoosh! The dozens of divine lights had also returned to the sky above Divine Dragon Island and rushed toward Qin Feiyang without any hesitation. This is not enough time. Quickly take the blood and enter the ancient castle, Qin Feiyang shouted. The 12 divine artifacts immediately displayed their heaven-defying methods and swept up all the blood and sea beast corpses.